about the North, I think Heather kind of said it this morning, is that things are different in the Arctic. So I'll tell you about some of the differences that we are facing. And I think a lot of people are referring to us as the canary in the coal mine. Things are happening first up there, so I just want to talk to you about how we're working and the challenges, and just about the territory itself. So just give you a perspective, the red outline is the area that my area of responsibility. So it's all 3 territories. It's 1/3 of Canada's land mass. And then what we've done is overlaid Central Europe, just to kind of give you a perspective of the area that we're dealing with. And with our office just being in Yellowknife in one of the territories, everything that we deal with and coordinating for the other 2 territories is usually done virtually, long distance, or if there's an emergency to get in there, well, we're hoping that the weather's great, that we're able to get in there to do that also. A bit of a perspective. With the 3 territories, we're at different stages with them. With Nunavut being our newest territory, just created in 1999, there's a lot of issues that we're dealing with. So strengths and priorities, and it just depends where they are. So here's just a quick overview to kind of give us what our populations are. In the Yukon, about 31,000, and as what we're looking at, most of them are concentrated within the city of Whitehorse, and I think it's almost like 85% is non-Aboriginal. When we get to the Northwest Territories, it's a 50-50 between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. And then when we get to Nunavut, it reverses. It's 85 Aboriginal, and the other 15 is non. Northwest Territories at Nunavut actually has they're the ones that don't have party politics. It's actually consensus. And so it kind of challenges just with our government structure and some of the political factors that we're dealing with. Especially in Nunavut, there's 4 official languages that we're always dealing with, and right now there's a new language law that has come out that Inuktitut. So a lot of the senior officials their first language has to be Inuktitut. And so that's a challenge, is trying to find people that are qualified for jobs that are at that level to help move their government forward. So those are just some of the issues to help provide where we're going. With Nunavut, all the communities are fly-in, or you're getting there by sea. When we get to the Northwest Territories, we have 33 communities, but 16 are without year-round access. So little changes. And then when we get to the Yukon, we have the 14 communities, but only one of them is fly-in. So as we're going across the country, these are the challenges that we're just dealing with, and with small capacities. Yukon is 8 languages. In Northwest Territories, they recognize 11 different languages. So just some of the challenges, especially as a federal government, with our languages being English and French, but then when we're trying to deal with the people in the communities and we want to get down to that level, it can provide us with some. And some of the impacts that we're seeing, and so there's a snow one, there's for Sheena, just to show her some snow with the sign.
Real snow.
Yeah, the real snow that we're feeling. So, and this, again, I'm coming from the perspective, this is very much from the north, from the community, it's the non-scientific, so it's great that I can now connect with Heather and get some more of that scientific to come behind, but this is what we're feeling. I've been up north for 20 years. It was a 3-month summer job, typical northerner, now end up staying. I am noticing warmer winter temperatures, less predictable ice conditions, shorter winter roads, the thawing of permafrost, the sea levels, we're getting a lot more storms. There's a lot more moisture in the air, like especially with their snow, the melting sea ice, and the less predictable weather patterns. And it's definitely happening, and especially when you're talking to a lot of our community elders that are around, they're saying the same thing. This is what we're feeling. So just to talk a bit about the increase in our forest fires and some of the events that we are seeing. So there's a lot of records, especially with the forest fire, maybe it was 10 years before we were beating all the different records. Now we're finding it's every 2 to 3 years, and it looks like some of the science is coming, it's going to be even faster. Our critical infrastructure, when we talk about, if we have a power outage, especially in most of our smaller communities or isolated communities, well, because when they lose their power, a lot of times if they don't have, they're on trucked water or sewage systems, so all of a sudden you're losing the pumps to your water, your sewage system. So when the power goes out, you now don't have water, you don't have sewage, you don't have everything else that's going along with that. So just the impacts are greater. It's causing us to have community challenges where we're being isolated, and just the prolonged weather, they delay our response and recovery efforts. So there's many times last winter, Rankin Inland, we lost all 3 diesel generators for the community. So we had no power. Well, the only thing is that the only way that you can get them in was to fly them in. Well, we couldn't find a big enough aircraft that could land on the runway to fly it in, and then we're having the weather with the blizzard and the windstorms that we couldn't get anybody in there to be able to provide them with the equipment that they needed. So it was just a compounded issue that we're eventually, eventually the weather came with us, and we're able to get folks in, but those are just some of the impacts that's happening. I think one of the biggest one is the degradation of the permafrost. And it's happening at many different levels, and it really came to light this summer. But think about it, in the north, all our communities were built on the permafrost. So as soon as this is starting to melt, we're just seeing all our structures, everything's becoming unstable. So a lot of our shifting buildings, when we're thinking of public safety, things are shifting, so sometimes even our chimney systems are going in. We can end up with fire hazards coming down to level, causing smoke and fire, broken sewer lines, shifting buildings, cold air leaks. And all these, it's going to be very expensive just for people. And a lot of the housing, and that is government housing, or it's government-related housing, so it's, again, the government putting the money back in to help us to move forward. Some of the problems we have, I don't know if anybody's been to Yellowknife, one of our main streets that runs down into Old Town. It's almost like a roller coaster ride. We've always had problems with the permafrost and then with the water running underneath the system. So they're putting in new sewer and water pipes, and they were having problems and they're always replacing them within, not even 10 years after they put them in. So now they've tried Cemetrix, which is this new material that they've actually put in, and they said it seems to be working and that they're hoping that this will be one of their solutions. More expensive than what they've used in the past, but they're hoping in this case to stop the insanity, because in the past they were just kind of replacing it always with the same material, so now they've actually tried something different. So we'll just hope to see that that's going to increase the lifespan for us. And one of the issues that we found is that NRCan did a study of 5 communities in the Northwest Territory to assess the impacts and costs of the thawing of the permafrost. And the Northwest Territories was just picked just because of its vulnerability and with the chances of building the pipelines and that are going through there with the Mackenzie Valley. So it was a major area that could also have an economic factor. So the results is that Nunavut was a hot spot for permafrost hazards. They stand to lose the most, and that they're saying it was up to 75% of their existing buildings would be affected by this. And just to replace the foundations or repair it was going to be a $120 million venture. So, and then if they did nothing, and that's if they just wanted to wait and fix that portion of it. So a lot of it now is like, can we go forward? Can we make some changes? We know that this is an issue, so what can we do? And another problem that we're having is that with the permafrost, it's also triggering some of the breaches of some of our community water reservoirs. So again, we're getting back into the safeguarding of water for the communities. It's from the water point, how do we get this in? So we have to come up with new strategies. And as what's happening is that it's great for the communities that they do this, but again, a lot of them are on formula funding. They're getting money from the government, but they're not getting extra money to kind of develop these new strategies, where they want to go. So some of them are just saying, well, we don't have the money, we're not going to worry, but we'll wait till something happens. And that's not really where we want to be. I'll just give you a bit of a case study. This one kind of brings light forward to Pangerton, spring flood 2008. So there's just an overview. It's an old picture of Pangerton. But when I did get the call from emergency measures, is that they had a state of a local emergency due to flash flooding in the Duval River. And is what happens, it was compromising the 2 bridge. They had an old bridge, and right beside it they're building the new bridge. It was just about done completion. It was going to be a week before it was open, and now it was gone. And so that there were safety concerns. Now the only problem is it split the community, and this community is on truck water and sewage. The sewage lagoon and the water point was on one side of the bridge, the community's on the other. So with this being happening, we've now taken away their essential services. And as what we're finding with the flooding is that for 3/4 of a kilometer, the spring water was actually running under and it disappeared. All of a sudden it was gone. And some experts that came into the area that went in to check they were saying that they were figuring that it was following some old glacier routes. They were going under the community, and all of a sudden we were having sinkholes appear around town. So all of a sudden there was these big gaps were happening, and we didn't know if we were going to lose the community. Luckily we didn't lose any infrastructure at that point, but it was something that we still don't know what's going to happen. And so just one of those different ones. Luckily there was some international polar year, a lot of researchers up in the area, NRCan and INAC all got together, and they were able to send some experts in, because I mean, of course everybody wants to study this too, right? So it was a great time for a lot of scientists to go into the community